welcome to the first edition of our Fantasy Ballers podcast. I'm Nick from CWE, and I have been waiting to do this for quite some time. I really started, right after the All-Star break, trying to start this series. Didn't really work out too well. With all of my other obligations, I just had way too much to do, but I've kind of fallen into a more comfortable situation right now, so I have the time in my day to do what I would hope is going to be about a 20 to 30 minute podcast. I'm going to put it up on YouTube, see what kind of response I get. Then I'm going to probably transition over into being available just as an audio version only, because really, at the end of the day, other than my wife, who really wants to look at this ugly mug? Here we are, it's a draft night. I will admit I'll probably come back and do one of these videos tomorrow as well, because the thing that really makes the NBA draft, in my opinion, better than the NFL draft, and it's tough because the NFL draft goes for 3 days, 7 rounds. With the NBA draft, it's just boom, 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 and you're done. But you get so much movement during the NBA draft. It's a week before free agency, roughly, maybe. I think it's right around there. And teams are going to be making big-time moves. We'll talk about what already happened. We'll talk about what looks like could be happening in the next few hours here. We're really down to the point where the NBA draft, I believe, starts in between 6 and 6.5 hours. So, first thing, I think the most important thing to discuss, really what has been the blockbuster move thus far, has been the Brooklyn Nets trading Brook Lopez and the 31st pick or something like that to the Lakers for DAngelo Williams and a ridiculously bloated Timofey Mozgov contract. So this is definitely an interesting situation from a couple of perspectives. First and foremost, does look like at this point that this solidifies the fact that Lonzo Ball is going to go to the Lakers. You wouldn't get rid of ball handler if you're not bringing one back in. I know they like Jordan Clarkson. I think they like Clarkson playing off the ball. Plus, they're trying to package Clarkson as it is. So, Brook coming in is interesting because obviously he's a much better player than Timofey Mozgov. You have to wonder how this is going to affect Ivica Zubac. Is basically now fallen into the point where he is the backup center. Looked good when he wasn't outrageously fouling people in the end games of the 2016-2017 season. And Julius Randle as well, another name that they're reportedly shopping. I don't hate the construct of the Lakers team, but it appears to me that this is going to be a much different team come Friday morning than it is Thursday afternoon. I think you could see a lot of moving, wheeling, and dealing being done. They've got some contracts they need to get rid of. Why in the world they signed Wallbang? I will never understand that move, or the Mozgov move for that matter, but at least he's younger. DAngelo moving to Brooklyn, very, very interesting to me. Relegates. First of all, I don't know if relegates is the right word, but what it does is it makes that guard situation in Brooklyn that was already very overcrowded even more crowded. Lin looked very good last year in the time when he wasn't injured, so it's really tough to understand how DAngelo is going to fit in. I don't know that either one necessarily play the two very well, but they've got a host of guys like Sean Kilpatrick waiting in the wings, and they're on good contracts as well, so it'll be interesting. Timofey Mozgov, maybe the championship hangover is over. He was pretty dominating in Denver before moving on to Cleveland, where he just filled a role because of how the team was constructed. But obviously, you know, seeing Brook Lopez do what Lopez has done, and it's a much different game than Mozgov, but I'm not ruling out the chance of success that Mozgov could have there. You know, decent to bad players can have good fantasy games / seasons if the stars align and the opportunities are there. And what are we really talking about behind him? Justin Hamilton? I mean, he's a decent bet to replace Brook Lopez in terms of the type of game he plays, having an outside shot, still being able to rebound. So that's going to be really interesting to see how things work out. We'll have to keep our eyes glued more to that as the offseason continues. Then we had Dwight Howard moving on from Atlanta. Atlanta sends a pick with Howard to Charlotte for Marco Bellinelli, who's a good three-point shot guy that's definitely going to do no more than come off the bench for this Hawks team. Also get Miles Plumlee, who was playing on, and I don't know why anyone would give him that kind of money contract. Didn't see much action last year between the injuries and just really being jumped over by Cody Zeller, Marvin Williams, and Frank Kaminsky. Dwight Howard is the antithesis of everything that Zeller or Kaminsky actually do. Howard definitely a force around the rim, really close to the rim. Defensive boards, offensive boards, putbacks, horrible shot, cannot defend the mid-range. So a lot of those things are things that Zeller and Kaminsky did well. Both Zeller and Kaminsky still young, so I don't think it's unheard of that they could see their roles expand as Marvin Williams, who, let's face it, Williams looked really good last year. Hard to imagine Steve Clifford saying, all right, you're going to sit down now in favor of the young guys, but a lot can happen in the offseason program. We'll have to keep our eye on that as well. I think one takeaway is it doesn't look like Ramon Sessions is going to have his option picked up. Almost certain that the Hornets will be drafting a backup point guard in this draft because they have to get somebody who can come off the bench when Kemba needs to sit down, and it just didn't really happen last year. They've had Brian Roberts hanging out forever, and he's not the worst third option. He'll probably start one game a year by accident because it just seems to happen that way. But I definitely think that that's the path we will see the Hornets go down tonight. And admittedly, I don't know anything about college basketball, so if this podcast, if you thought this was going to be mostly about where I thought players were going to go, you're out of luck because I have no idea what I'm talking about when it comes to mostly everything but the NCAA basketball specifically. What we do want to touch on as well, Tim Frazier, his rights were traded to the Wizards for the 52nd pick. Really strong deal for the Wizards. Trey Burke just didn't work out. Brandon Jennings probably going to get more money than he should in free agency. And Tim Frazier has just proved over the last few years that he's a totally capable backup point guard. Had the season as a backup in Portland, New Orleans. So I think that this is good for the Wizards. If he gets the minutes, he can definitely be a productive asset on that team. So you can't hate it. I think it's actually a really strong move for them. Again, you want to make sure you're getting your star players the rest that they need so that they could be playing the best basketball they could be playing. That's exactly what this deal does for Washington. Now let's talk some things that just don't make sense. First and foremost, David Griffin being let go by the Cavaliers. Something deeper is going on there. I don't really quite understand what's happening, why that's the route that they are attempting to approach, but nonetheless, it's, where we're at. I live in Northeast Ohio. I'm not a Cavs fan. Their fans were absolutely obnoxious this postseason to the point where I was actually happy when they lost, just to spite everybody who, not knowing anything else about the construct of basketball, was really angry that Kevin Durant did what LeBron James never did and jumped to a winner. The Warriors drafted well. Like, the three guys on their team that are veritable superstars in this sport were not drafted number 1. They were not drafted number 2. They were not drafted number 3. Minnesota will tell you that they drafted Johnny Flynn before Stephen Curry. So I don't want to hear this just because a team plays smart, what, they can't bring in another piece? LeBron built basketball teams. He built 2 basketball teams. Anytime you get 2 top 10 or top 15 players to follow you somewhere, you're building a basketball team. That's what he did with Chris Bosh to go play with Dane Wade. That's what he did with Kevin Love to go back to play in Cleveland. And that's what's going to happen when he wants to hit the road and go to Los Angeles next year as well. Don't be surprised to see that Paul George, LeBron James combo in yellow. That's all I'm going to say about that. Chauncey Billups potentially coming in to be the Cavs' new GM. Cavs, no picks, no cap space, no hope, no prayer. My bold prediction is that I personally, and I've told several people this, and I'll go on air and say it, no rematch next year. Neither one of these teams make it to the finals. You can call me out on it all you want. I think that there's going to be teams in the East that get better. If Boston goes out, drafts well at number 3, or gets an asset in return for that and can pick up someone like a Gordon Hayward in free agency, you're going to sit here and tell me that LeBron, who, Cavs fans, was getting older. You know, the reason why the Warriors won, too, wasn't just because it was a super team, but LeBron at age 32. He wasn't age 32 when the finals started. It just so happened that excuse popped out later. And then on the West, personally, I have a feeling that the Spurs are going to make a run. There's already talk about guys like Lowry, George Hill, Chris Paul heading there. I think that that's going to put... I'm not convinced that the Warriors were going to be able to take that series from them with a healthy Kawhi. So the Golden State Warriors, they owe everything in the world to Zaza Pachulia being the dirtiest player in the game. Sorry, Ric Flair, but it's Zaza Pachulia now. Anyway, it's going to be an interesting night. We've got idiots like Phil Jackson falling asleep during player interviews, calling out Carmelo Anthony months ago, now calling out Kristaps Porzingis. If you are a professional basketball player, why do you want to go play in New York? New York was one of those marquee programs. Like, that's where, it's the Garden, man. Like, you want to go play there. They're one of the big cities in the world. They're one of the marquee names that you could have on your resume. But this is a joke. You've got an idiot. This guy is an idiot. I mean, there's no other words to describe it. You could like him for what he did in other places, but this is just stupid at this point. Where you don't want Porzingis? I get Carmelo. It hasn't worked. Personally, if I was the upper echelon ownership of the Knicks, it wouldn't be guys like Carmelo and Porzingis I'd be trying to run out of town. It would be you. You'd be the guy going. You're clearly the problem here. But no, that's not how things work. Phil Jackson is Phil Jackson. So regardless how bad of a position he puts the Knicks in moving forward, he's going to stick around. And he's going to run out. What he's going to do is he's going to trade Porzingis, and he's going to get a horrible return on his investment, because you can't call someone a unicorn and then expect to get that in return. I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen. He's taken on bad contracts and bad players with the likes of Noah and Rose, and I like these guys. These guys have won me money in the past, but you have to recognize the point when a guy's over the hill in his career, and Derrick Rose is there. Noah is there. These guys aren't on the court enough, and when they are, they're not really contributing how you need them to. I mean, it's asinine at this point to me. I can't understand how the Knicks have gotten in a position where there's no hope. It is June 22nd, 2017. As far as I'm concerned, the Knicks have already been eliminated from the playoffs next year. That's the reality. That's the only team I could say that about. I could literally see every other team making it. Not the Knicks, because it all starts at the top. That's where it all starts. It's the corporate culture you're in, and when you have an idiot like Phil Jackson at this stage in his career, in the position that he's in, this is what you get. You wanted him, you got him, now you got to deal with all the bad that goes along with him. So we'll see what they do. I mean, could you imagine a dream situation? If I'm the Sixers, and I have enough salary cap to do whatever I want in free agency, I might trade the top pick for Kristaps. Fuck it, who cares? Honestly, who cares? You're going to have Embiid, Saric, Covington, bring in Kyle Lowry. At that point, I'm looking at that team if I'm Kyle Lowry, and I'm saying, I've seen what's happened in Toronto, and we get there, but just not quite. But these guys can let me compete for 3 years. I really believe that. There are a lot of young, raw talent, but that team is coming together. Everybody made fun of Sam Hinkie when he was, blowing seasons and drafting guys like Nerlens Noel. Maybe that one wasn't a great one, but we got Ben Simmons here. We've got Covington here. We've got Embiid. We've got Saric finally. We've got Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot. This is not a team that can't improve again next year, and this team improved in DFS, and this is not going to be a specific 100% DFS or fantasy basketball. It says a fantasy baller, because I always think of the Skee-Lo song. I wish I was a little bit taller. I'm tall, I'm 6'5", so I don't wish I was a little bit taller. I do wish I was a baller. I do have a girl that looks good. She lives with me, so she ain't got to call me. I ain't got to call her. Point being, though, it's about my fantasy. I would have loved to play ball. How exciting would that have been to be a professional athlete? But the point I'm trying to get at here, that team's a good team. In a DFS perspective in 2015, you were scared about playing guys against the Sixers because they're horrible. They play horrible defense, but is your guy going to be in there enough minutes to get value? Are you going to get value out of this guy? That's a legitimate concern. There's no question about it whatsoever. That wasn't the case last year. These guys competed. They stood toe-to-toe with good teams and played them hard. What's going to happen with another year of seasoning? If you can get double the games out of Embiid as you did last year, you got to clap your hands and pat yourself on the back. This team is going to be a force, I'm telling you, and it might not be this year, but if they can make some key free agent signings, draft well, this could be a monster of a team. All right, I want to wind things down here. Last two things I want to touch on. LaMarcus Aldridge reportedly being shopped does not seem to fit in with Greg Popovich's system. I've felt that basically for both years. It's been a letdown. Not sure where he would end up. I think they want to get a top 10 pick out of him. Pop loves the young guys. There's a potential situation brewing with how the Spurs play this offseason. As much as we've heard the LeBron to LA rumors, if you're LeBron, how could you not want to go play with Kawhi Leonard and Greg Popovich and do that? What would be better? Because, LeBron going to Lakers, that's great. But he's going to have help come with him. He's not going to just go to the Lakers with Julius Randle and Lonzo Ball and hoist a championship. But you could do that with the Spurs. You could go there with Kawhi Leonard and whether it's Chris Paul, who he's wanted to play with. That's an interesting situation. So if they're able to move Aldridge, get his contract off the books, and they kind of stand pat in free agency and just say, hey, we think we could win with what we have, maybe take some guys who want to come in to try to win a championship like David West did 2 years ago and finally got it done this year. It's an interesting scenario for LeBron. Basically, got a couple big names still being talked about. Paul George, think he's going to stay put in Indiana tonight. Not really sure we're going to see him in a new uniform quite yet. I think we'll see one more season of him there, and he'll be moving on to the Lakers. It's just so interesting at this point that you can just call your shot in basketball. You just say, I'm going to go play for the Lakers, and the Lakers are like, well, shit, that sounds great. We're going to sign you up as soon as you can. But that's where we're at. Next guy on the list, Ricky Rubio. I'm one of the few, maybe, I don't know. Why shop him? He was good. What if you I guess if you have to package him in a Jimmy Butler deal, I mean, my guess is it would have to be Rubio, the 7th pick, and the door to get Jimmy Butler, maybe more. They're not trading Towns. Maybe they'll trade Jeng. But without that 7th pick, I don't know. But look, the construct of this team could change. I'm just envisioning a scenario here. How do you feel if you're able to do that? You ship Rubio out, you ship Jeng out, you send the 7th pick to Chicago. Chicago's getting 3 good players. There's no question about it. Denzel Valentine there, Bobby Portis, Taj Gibson is still fine, Robin Lopez, not the worst. Dwayne Wade has 24 million reasons, he said, to why he's going to come back. But now, on the Wolves, you've got a starting point guard of some combination of Tyus Jones, Chris Dunn, or Zach LaVine. I prefer to keep LaVine off the bench, but playing 36 minutes. You shift Wiggins to the 2. You got Butler at the 3. Run Nemanja Bjelica at the 4. You got Karl Anthony Towns at the 5. That's not a bad basketball team. Coach, under Tom Thibodeau, that team takes a 10-win jump at the very least. And I think Jimmy Butler is a happier man for it. So that's what we're looking at right now. Butler's, in my opinion, the one who's most likely going to shift positions tonight. I definitely think that it's going to be very interesting to see how things go on. I feel like I've used the term very interesting at least 15 or 20 times during this podcast. I'm going to be back tomorrow. I'll still probably be pissed at whatever Phil Jackson does tonight. I'm not even a Knicks fan. Just don't like stupidity, and he seems to be oozing it at this point. So until then, thanks for watching. Hopefully I'm going to get someone to do this along with me, because it's fun to hear my own voice. I mean, it really is. But banter's far better when it's 2 people bantering about something and not one guy just giving his opinion. Thanks again. If you like it, make sure to hit like. I would like to figure out how to do this. I love basketball. Want to give the people what they want. Don't hesitate to drop a comment, even if it's to tell me I'm an idiot. I love arguing with people, especially because I know they're already wrong. Thanks again for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'll see you again tomorrow.